Thanks, folks, for allowing me into your homes. And you're kind of getting into my most precious space. This is my studio. I'm based in Tullamore in the Midlands. And it's kind of like my uh, kind of sanctuary in a way. It's kind of like a cross between a man cave and a sanctuary and a place of growth. And yeah, it's great. So you're really welcome into my space. Um, I think that I might just start off with kind of talking about art and its kind of influence on me and how I used it or found it as kind of my language, maybe, in a way, if that's a good start.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I remember I wasn't, and my mum will attest to this, I wasn't the most pleasant of children when I was growing up. I was always all over the place and creating devilment and just quite, kind of disruptive. But art and creating and making was my um, safe place. It was the way that I was able to distill the world and where I was able to have a voice. And I was very, very lucky. Like, I came from rural Ireland in the early 80s, and I was very lucky that my mum and dad accepted, kind of my talent at the time, or my want to pursue this, kind of field, and nurtured it. But I was, as I said, I was growing up in Roscommon, and it wasn't really the most kind of conducive place in the world to be an artist. I remember I went to the Christian Brothers School that was in Roscommon Town. And I remember in the first couple of weeks of starting as a first year, just as like a 12 or 13-year-old, I went into the principal and was negotiating with him because he lied to me. So I went in the summer, and you walk around the school and you pick your schools that you want to go to. And he said, yeah, there's going to be art in the school. And I went in anyway, and I was there maybe about a week and a half, and there was no sign of art and no sign of it coming. So I marched up to his office and I said, you're after lying to me. You told me I was coming here under the pretense that I'd get to study what I wanted. And he was like, oh, well, I can't do anything about that now. And I said, well, I'm going to the convent. So I spent the next 5 years studying art in the convent, and got my leaving cert. And I was the first student then that left the Christian Brothers School that went to NCAD. I was teaching for a while, and it was maybe the first couple of years of the recession. So kind of the school was going okay. I wasn't making much of my own artwork because I was, kind of giving over my creative energy to the students. And in your early years of teaching, you're, kind of, you don't necessarily have that time. And you haven't figured out that you can't, kind of, that you're burning the candle at both ends. You're kind of naive in a way. And then, so school life was busy. And then outside my school life, kind of like personal life, it was very hard. All of my mates were leaving. They were leaving because of the recession, or those that had decent, good jobs in a way were kind of forced to move back into their homes. Because they were of a certain age, the government had slashed their payments, and life as a young male in Ireland wasn't the very best. It was quite hurtful, and you were seen as lesser. You weren't seen as kind of as worth or having as much value as maybe other cohorts that were maybe in the country. That's what I felt. That was my perception. And then also in school became very, very tough. Within the first 5 years of teaching, I lost 5 kids to suicide. And that was a really traumatic time. I say it in kind of in a lot of the talks that I give, and every time I say it, I get that, like, you just get a shiver, a cold shiver, and you're like, you don't forget the faces of the kids that you've lost. And because when you're teaching, it's a beautiful space, because you're kind of in some ways their parent or their brother and sister or their friend, and you occupy a lot of different professions or kind of roles. And then when you lose them kids. It's gut-wrenching. And it's good, you know, to kind of, to go and to, you know, look at things from a different vantage point. There's wisdom in that. You know, like that your grandparents would have always told you to do that, you know, take time, step back, look at it from a different perspective, or walk in someone else's shoes. And there's real wisdom that's in that. It was coming up to 2015, and it was maybe the Christmas before the referendum, and I decided that I was going to make a piece that talked about that. And when you think about it, there wasn't really much of a decision or much of a movement away from suicide or suicide ideation and mental health to equality, because I had seen too many kids that chose death over than choosing to tell people who they were, and you know, kind of the social kind of norms or the prescriptions of society and the pressure was too great for people to live and you know, kind of live a life that was true and authentic to themselves. So I kind of dipped back into my my role as an artist and looked at this beautiful painting that's in the National Gallery called Meeting on the Turret Stairs. It's a Dutch, I think, ballad about Helilil and Hildebrand. So she is a princess in a castle, and she falls in love with the bodyguard, and he's of a lower social standing. And her father, the king, bans that relationship because they're not of an equal status. And it was exactly what was happening in Ireland at the time. We had the government who, you know, kind of forbade, you know, same-sex love or same-sex marriage from happening or being recognised. So I used that as the basis for the piece. Put up the piece with some of my best mates. My dad was there, my brother. I convinced my mate who was a cop, who was off duty at the time, to come and stand at the bottom of the cherry picker, because we were across from, like, you know, kind of just on the busiest crossing in Dublin city centre, and we didn't know what was going to happen. You know, kind of, we didn't know throughout that night what kind of aggression we may get. So we threw it up, and I went to bed for about 24 hours, because in the lead up to a drawing, putting it up, you don't sleep because you're trying to negotiate everything to line up perfectly. So I woke up then the day after, and Panty had put up a picture of it on her Insta or on her social media, and there was 1 million interactions on it. And it went on the front cover of the New York Times, and yeah, it just went around the world, and it became the image for the referendum, which was pretty amazing. They're massive. Like there's one piece that we put up in Limerick that was 7 stories tall, and it was it took 2 machines to put up in 10 days, and like the scale of the stuff is huge. There's a piece that's down in Waterford on an old hotel that oversaw and overlooks Waterford. It's kind of, I saw this space as a piece that, you know, when you're in Rio and Christ the Redeemer kind of looks down on the city, but Waterford had that same place, but it just looked like dereliction. And I always felt sorry for the city, because every time they looked up, they saw something that was in a ruin and falling apart, and you know, kind of it was the kind of the visual way to kind of describe how Ireland was for that time, and people in Waterford didn't have access to the same mental health, you know, kind of support that people in other geographical locations had. So I wanted to make a piece that you know, kind of minded and supported people that was down there. So it was called Ar Scorna Céile a Muranadini. And the idea behind that is that we live under each other's shadow, is the meaning, the direct meaning of that. But there's the meaning of it is, or the kind of the truth behind it is that one lead person will go out and stand in front of the sun and protect the community from that, so that they get to live their day-to-day, you know, lives, and they take it in turn to protect and to, you know, kind of create a shadow. Or it's kind of like, you know, the penguins when the deep cold comes in, that they move out to the outside and then move slowly to the inside, and that we protect ourselves when we have community, and when we hold each other up, you know, kind of, because we all fall at certain points in our lives, and we fall heavy, and sometimes we fall quite lightly, and sometimes we need to be absolutely held up because our backbone is gone, and sometimes we just need a nudge or a word or a kindness, and it's the idea that, you know, kind of we rise together. There's a couple of things that I had considered. So we had talked about the Hedge School for, you know, kind of a couple of weeks now, and what I try to do with my artwork is take you know, kind of an issue or a time and distill it down and think, and, you know, kind of allow things to sit with me and see what comes out of it then at that point. And there's a couple of things that I had just noted down, as in what the you know, kind of pandemic has brought us is, well, it has brought me maybe to look at the preciousness of all walks of life. So, you know, kind of those that are in care homes, why were those nearly considered to be the last or the least important, and why did they become an afterthought? Those that are in direct provision, vulnerable women and children, and the inequality of the pandemic. It's generally those that are thought of last should be the ones that we think of, you know, kind of not, you know, in a level or in a numbering that is, you know, kind of much higher up than where they are at the minute. And Lynn on Wednesday will speak massively, I think about that. As I said, I hate the idea of business, and the recovery can't be just an economic recovery, and it can't just be about getting back on our feet, you know, kind of under the strategy of just the economy. We have to heal, and that's going to take time. There's people in our community that have died alone. There's families that are, you know, kind of hurt from that. We need to, you know, kind of sit with that, help those people, and, you know, kind of not, you know, omit them from the conversation and just talk about the tangible kind of entity that is money. We need to question, you know, kind of about a lot of things that have happened. We need to look to our elders for wisdom. We have lost that act. My granddad was one of the greatest influences that I've had on my life, and he wasn't a religious man at all, but he broke his life down into four main things: thank you, I love you, forgive me, I forgive you. And it was kind of, you know, really clean cut wisdom. And that's important, because we have to, you know, kind of look at things and how do we reshape things before we move forward. And, you know, kind of gather minds and gather communities. There's a lot of people that have now come together that were individual or disparate for long numbers of years, decades even. How do we mind that? You know, we can't just go back to the individual, everyone in 4 rooms of the house all looking at the same program. You know what I mean? There has to be a connectivity that comes into it. Another thing that I was considering and thinking about was government and state institutions. They're typically the last responders. So, you know, like you have your first responders and then you have your last responders. Well, they're the last ones. They respond generally through pressure, and they're always kind of coming when the sell-by date is, you know, near up. Yeah. In this time when our voices are taken and we don't know what to say or what to do, there are a cohort of writers and artists and actors and poets and musicians and filmmakers and performers that have an ancient voice, that have a deep language, and they can speak for us and to us. And it, you know, kind of wisdom and you know, kind of old traditions and old paths of life and old societies held up the arts or held up that kind of that way of life, and cared for them because they saw the wider benefit of that. I think that's really important. What I have found in the last while is growth. I feel myself deeply now in the last couple of weeks connected to the ground and the soil. My room in school, we did a count there before the breakup, and we had 83 plants in the room. The kids call it the jungle. But since then I've potted loads of stuff. I have watched seedlings, bought them, carefully thought about what I wanted, watched them grow, you know, kind of co-authored a kind of you know, kind of a life in a way, cultivated, and, you know, kind of there's something really timeless about that. And it's quite beautiful just to sit and watch that, watch nature.
Great, yeah.
I have dreamt like I've never dreamt before. I actually wake up tired. I'm dreaming so much. I feel that the time that we're in echoes a lot of my childhood. I walk out into the driveway and I see my neighbours. I would have never seen that before. I was telling you, Kathy, earlier on, we had neighbours who are cocooning on both sides, like both immediate sides of the house that's here. And I go out doing the shopping for them every day or every second day. And we had them over in the driveway for coffee and upside down pineapple cake there the other day. And that was really nice. Like, I'm here 9 years and that has never happened, like, ever. And now I have that connection that is, you know, kind of tangible. I've considered the slow pace of life, the hazy sky, the sun, breathing. A couple of things that I have noticed as well is that I'm not at full throttle. The idea that life is on and on at 1,000%. And there's something inherently wrong with the need to be at that level of every hour, every day. So the intense workloads, the massive to-do lists, the commute times, the social pressures, the pressure to broadcast the perfect life, all of that has fallen away, like completely fallen away. And I feel massive distance from that. And I'm incredibly thankful that I've had the time to consider that.